You're listening to Countercurrent, the podcast about business, family, and freedom. Hosted by Aaron Smith and Jack Hudson.
Okay, we are back for the next episode, and I am super excited for this hot take. This is a real life hot take that happened to me over the weekend, and it was literally life or death. So if somebody wants a good story, buckle up. Our house was built in 1948. We have a small tree in the back and a row of hedges. And so I thought that I would borrow a friend's chainsaw and take out the bushes and the small tree. So just as a prelude, the hot take is that power tools are not okay and they're dangerous. I go out on Saturday morning and I start to cut down the bushes. I get halfway down.
Right, but on your way out the door.
Correct. Thank you for reminding me. On the way out the door, I was reminded by someone in my house that chainsaws are dangerous. Quote, chainsaws are dangerous. And I said, with all of my infinite wisdom, that chainsaws are only dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. Mind you, I've never handled a chainsaw in my entire life. But I've watched a ton of people do it.
Right.
They can do it in the movies. I know how to do it. Well, that's fine. So I go outside and about halfway down the row, and there's this pesky stump of a bush. And so I'm trying to move the chainsaw through it, and it launches through and it smacks my thigh. And so I look down and I think two things. One, I've never seen that far into my body before, which was jarring. I also don't do blood. So I felt like I was going to pass out immediately. So I look, I've never seen that far into my body before. And two, I knew that I would never be able to live this down. I just walked out of my house all fat and sassy that I knew exactly what I was doing. And so I ran back, hobbled, did not run anywhere. Hobbled back into my house, told my wife that I needed the neighbor across the street who's a nurse. Shout out to Ann Turk, who is amazing. She came over, patched me up. It ended up that I only needed some medical glue to sew it or to close it up. But all of that to say, power tools are dangerous.
And figure out how to apply that to the business world, the crowd. That's fantastic.
So how you apply it to the business world is don't do stupid things.
Right. Yeah. And understand that specializing is okay. It's totally fine. You don't have to know how to do everything. So what I haven't heard you talk about from the story is, did it hurt immediately or were you just in shock?
I think I was just in shock because I looked down and it had ripped through the pants that I was wearing, obviously. And I felt like I was going to pass out immediately. Right. So all that to say, don't try this at home. And how you apply it to the business world. I pay an accountant because an accountant knows what they're doing better than I do. My wife, when I came back in and after I got all bandaged up, she said, "Are we done being cheap?" Yep. Got it. Yes. So
landscaper.
Yes. So we'll be hiring a landscaper. And then on the business side, I will continue employing an accountant because I don't want to know how to do that. Right. So maybe I need to take more of what I do from the business side into my personal side too.
So my stepdad would have taught me that time you would spend doing the yard, figure out how to make more money than that to pay the landscaper and pocket some.
Yes.
So just use those weeknights to get a little extra work in.
Right. But I'm just stubborn, right? And this is true whether it's my personal life or my life in business. I'm curious. I want to learn. And so for me, I'm like,
I'm sure I can do it.
I know how to run a chainsaw. It turns out that I don't, and that I'm permanently banned. So no more chainsaws for me.
There you go. No more chainsaws in the Smith house or this office.
Correct.
Yes, because it was briefly here.
It was briefly here. I had borrowed it from a friend who dropped it off at the office. And now it is sitting in my garage permanently unavailable to me until my friend comes to pick it up.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, we want to do something new now and dive into recap some of the feedback we've gotten on previous episodes. So I want to start by talking about death to 9 to 5, which is what we talked about last week. I had several friends reach out who have both recently entered the professional world in the last year. One of which loves his 9 to 5. He said it has turned into an 8 to 5, which makes sense. He's on Central Time, bound to happen. But he loves being able to turn off the computer, have his evenings to himself, not have to
check emails,
take calls, take texts. When he logs off, he's done. But he also is now hybrid in a lot of ways and works from home some days and goes to the office some days. So he's kind of doing the best of both worlds. And then I had another friend reach out when I even mentioned the topic and said, great, I hate 9 to 5s. He is very much loves to be on the go, loves to be moving, not be stuck in an office, likes variety and doesn't mind if that comes on odd hours. He'd rather be interested in his work than have a set schedule for his work. So I thought that was some interesting feedback. Those are two recent college grads out in the world.
That's really interesting. I had a friend when we were talking about death to 9 to 5. Part of that podcast that we talked about was how to begin and end the week, right? Mm-hmm. Is it better to have a 4-day week? And I actually got a lot of feedback on that. There are some people that are like, yeah, no, I hate Fridays. Like I would love to have half-day Fridays in the summer or try to find a different way to set up my week. I really took to heart what we said. And I actually got good feedback from the people that I work with that'd actually be a really fun Friday is coming into work in the morning, doing the, brainstorm sesh where you actually work more on the business and, have some space to dream and set vision and look at where else you could, show up for your clients. And then take the rest of the day off so that you could actually have some time to have an exit ramp into the weekend.
Yeah, I was stopped by my old stomping grounds at Butler the other day, and somebody asked, so do you actually work every day now, Jack? Because you do your own thing. It's like, yes.
I actually probably work more than the 9 to 5.
Yeah. But I said, we've thought about making Fridays sort of like a brainstorming big idea day. And they were like, oh, that's so great that you can just do that, set your own schedule. And I was like, yes, it is a blessing, very much so. But at the same time, you check the email at 9 p.m. too. I think that Friday idea is great. I have a feeling it will be implemented in this office soon. Give it a shot. And I mean, even today and yesterday, I kind of treated yesterday as an internal day, worked on operations and figuring out how can we optimize things with AI tools and software and how do they integrate? And then I was asking AI, here's all the software tools we use. How can these sync together? Or is there redundancy here? Or should I use something else? So that was interesting. Still a lot to learn, but figuring it out.
And just for all the listeners of the pod out there, Jack actually found an AI tool that cloned my voice. So he uploaded one track from the podcast in, and all day long he's been trolling me from across the office using my voice, but with whatever he puts in there. So literally AI has limitless tools, and it's really hard to file a workplace harassment issue when
it's 3 people.
There's no one to report it to. But seriously, it's amazing what tools are out there.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on imposter syndrome. I got a ton of feedback after that. I'm going to pull up my phone. I threw some things up on Instagram just to poll some people to see where folks at. And I had 3 slides up. One was a poll to ask how many people feel like they deal with imposter syndrome. 91% of people that participated in the poll said that they pretty regularly deal with it. There were 2 people that said that they don't. I know which 2 people that they are, and I think that you're lying. And I know that you guys both listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that everybody does deal with it in some way or another. But that was really interesting. One of the questions was, if imposter syndrome is hard for you, how do you counteract it? And that one was, it was really interesting to see what some of the people said. I'll pull up some of the good responses. One person said, keep working at it and eventually I'll believe it. right? And I think that is true. You sometimes put your own limits on what you think that you can accomplish. Another person said they recall positive and encouraging things, mentors, bosses who have said things about them in the past that reaffirm what they're currently doing now. We touched on that in one of the other episodes, about the roles that mentors and bosses play in your life, in your current job. But I think that also holds true in other parts of your career as well. This one was really good. I remind myself that I am at the table and doing the thing, even if I don't feel like I deserve to be where I belong.
That's great.
Like that's
so true.
Super good.
Yeah. If you think you don't deserve to be there, well, you're there. So you did something right.
Yep. And another person who we all work closely with said, I make sure to celebrate my successes and also think about how my parents raised me. And I think that's true. If you think that's of awesome. How other people who you know and respect feed into your life, that I think that helps to counteract that too. I had another question that was, what has imposter syndrome stopped you from attempting? And this one, I had a few responses. But one of the good ones was, I went years without speaking in meetings and feeling like I didn't belong there. And I'm like, that's so true. So like for me, the way I framed that question was, has it stopped you from going after a job promotion? Has it stopped you from, right. But I think that it can be even that small,
granular,
right? Yeah. Like thinking through, if you are at a table and you don't feel like you belong there, how do you get the gumption to go ahead and do that?
I experienced that this week. I joined my fraternity's alumni association at Butler, and it was my first meeting back. I ran it as the student side. I was the alumni liaison. So it was my first meeting back. I didn't want to step on toes because I hadn't been to one of those in like 2 years. And then afterwards, I was talking to a smaller group and I told them an idea I had, and they said, well, why didn't you bring that up in new business? And I was like, well, I wasn't trying to rock the ship on my first time here. And they're like, just say these things. That's why we invited you back. So I think that was one of those things where it's like, okay, you have to realize that the reason you're there is to provide your opinion and your feedback. And normally that'll get you far. And if it's a bad idea, you'll probably just move on and it'll be fine. That my mom had interesting insight on imposter syndrome as well. She called me and she's like, this is so true in every part of life. For her, one time she said she felt she was a very young mom with my brother, and like one of the youngest ones at the school. And she remembers feeling like everybody thought that, maybe she didn't know what she was doing, or that she deserved unsolicited advice, or this, that, or the other as the young mom, just because she was in her early 20s and maybe others were not. So I thought that was a really interesting comparison as well. It's not business, it's all parts of life.
That is true. Whether you're, no matter what type of working environment you're at, if you're at home with kids, if you're in an office like we are, if you're in a corporate environment, I think it shows up in all different types of ways.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's dive into today's topic, which is, what does success really mean? I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with and don't realize that it's not just one thing. And for me, when I wrapped my head around that, it helped make life a lot less daunting, which was, my interpretation has always been that you can have success in different ways. So what does your version of monetary success look like? Does it just look like being able to buy a house one day? Or does it look like you want to be a millionaire? That doesn't mean success for all people, right? And then professionally, does success look like making 6 figures, or does it look like having a job you love, no matter how much it pays? So I think all of those things you have to balance, and you have to realize, is my success rooted in monetary things and love for your work, for your family and personal life? Where does that come from, and where do you get that feeling from? Because you won't feel fulfilled by a job, no matter how much it pays, if you don't love the job.
No, I think that's so good. And I think oddly enough, social media has totally twisted the way that people view success, right? So I know one went viral this week with, someone's path throughout their day, right? They showed how they wake up, work out, do all these things that actually there's no work involved at all.
Oh, the ice face guy?
Yeah. Okay. it's so unrelatable that I didn't even watch it all the way through, but I saw that it got a ton of traction. Right. But that's, I think, what people, for the most part, view success as, right? Like the ability to stick your face in a bowl of ice water that's all bottled. But actually that's so unrelatable for so many people.
Yeah.
And so unrealistic that it would never be able to happen. But I think that's the hard part with social media is it's totally skewed the way that all of us view success. I mean, for me, I know that I've shared it on here before, but I think the ultimate version of wealth is being able to call the shots the way that you want to. Right there, I know a lot of wealthy people that are absolutely chained to their desk. Right? They would never be able to actually step away and go on a vacation they wanted to, or pick up one day and decide they want to go to Austin for the weekend. There's so many other versions of wealth and success that, to me, my ultimate version of success is to be able to be completely debt free, to call my own shots. So then all the money that I make is just fun money.
Yeah.
Right. If you're not beholden to anybody else, then if you want to shut the business off and go on a vacation for a month, you can do it, because you've got everything on one side of the balance sheet. Yeah. But I know that it's different for everybody. What's success look like for you?
Yeah, I think I have, I've sort of set success goals in each part of my life, right? Like monetarily, I have goals of how much I'd love to make in a year one day, because I want to provide that much value to someone else. Mm-hmm. It's not that I care to be super affluently wealthy or anything. It's that I want to make sure I'm doing something with that big of an impact monetarily, right? For business goals, we face this battle of, hey, when do we want to hire someone? Do we want to hire someone at all? Because the minute you hire someone, it's not nearly as easy to take that trip to Austin, right? Because you have to be there for your employee and help set expectations and make sure they're getting their work done. And also, you don't want to look like the boss that just takes off and leaves you with the work too. So we think about that a lot. And eventually we want to do that and be able to hire someone. Absolutely. But how do you do that and maintain that freedom of time and our personal schedule? That's a hard balance and something we're still figuring out. And I think, we heard from somebody, push something until you break it and then hire somebody. Right. So I think we'll just keep pushing it until we can't handle our work anymore. And then we'll be in a position to do that. And then personally, right, it looks like being able to have a family and support them and have, maybe the house of your dreams, which doesn't have to be a mansion. It can be a historic home in Nevillesville that you get to remodel for a decade, right? Yep. Or the rest of your life, because home projects never stop. That is
just don't use a chainsaw.
Yeah, just don't use a chainsaw and maybe hire a contractor. So like, to me, I've set those goals in each part of my life. And it doesn't mean like, I don't view success as one title or I don't even see like a finish line for it. To me, as long as I can have a family and a nice place to live eventually, right? That's sort of the biggest piece of it. And I know that that's top on my tier, followed by the other things. And I like to have it in that order of which part of my life is most important to me. And then what are my success goals there? And that's going to be my first priority. And then we'll move backwards.
Yeah. I think the other component, I think all those are true for me as well. The other component that I look at, especially when you're growing and scaling a team, is one of the ultimate things that you can do as a business owner is like, yeah, you can have purpose in what you do, but also if you can provide good jobs and a good working environment for people out there, I think that is a huge role that your business can play. Right. And that, to me, that's a huge method of measuring success. If you have a team that shows up and wants to be a part of what you're doing, not only does that reflect on how you're managing your team and what you're doing, but you're also giving them a good income that they're able to live a good life on,
support their family,
and support their family. Right. And so I think it is a ripple effect in that as well.
Yeah. And I think that's something else. Something I want to be conscious of when we hire someone eventually is I want to know what their dream job is. And it might not be with us, and that's fine. And I want to figure out how we can be the Band-Aid to get there and make sure that we're a step towards that for them. Hopefully, maybe it winds up being their dream job and they're with us for their whole career. But if not, I want to make sure that in 5 or 10 years, we see them succeed to where they want to be. And I think that's hugely important. And sometimes, I've seen it in other people in the creative industry, at the fraternity. An alumni of mine had a PR and communications firm. A graduate a few years ago joined him and started doing video production for him. He now has a huge creative house in Indy, and actually bought out part of that alumni's business as he was retiring. So he took off a whole bunch of the client work and does all of their video and content. So you kind of saw this progression of the older man succeeded and was ready to retire, and then the younger guy was able to pursue his dreams. And I thought that's awesome, and I would love to see that with the people I work with eventually. Having, if our first person's an editor and then they want to go start an editing house, and we can just sub things out to them and niche down even more. I would love that, right? I want people that are passionate and are go-getters and are problem solvers. And part of that means knowing that hopefully they outgrow you in their given field. And hopefully I'll continue to outgrow them in my niche and my favorite parts of the job.
I think those are all true. One of the pieces that I've been most impressed by over the last 10 years, you see different working environments, right? When I was on the Hill, I was impressed. There was one office that they made it a part of somebody's review that they had to go interview for another job. And that's so great. In a way, as the employee, when you're in that position, they did that because they want you to constantly be nimble and understanding like what the working environment looks like, but also figuring out like what jobs are out there that you would want to do. And if possible, like what could we potentially bring back and let you do in that role for our office? Right. So in a kind of backwards way, you felt like they were invested in your well-being, so you wanted to stay. Right. I think in the working world right now, that's so taboo. If you're going to look for a job, you can't tell your boss, you can't tell anybody, because then you're afraid you're going to get fired. Then it could get awkward at work. And I think that putting it all out on the table is so healthy. It's so healthy for everybody. Yeah. No matter if you're a big operation or small operation.
Well, yeah. And I think by opening that door, you also see, oh my gosh, I could do more things in this field over there. And maybe it is time for you to naturally progress and move forward, and then take somebody else on and have a smooth transition and a smooth onboarding, and take that step together as an organization. And then guess what? Now that office in DC especially knows somebody in this other office, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a great observation. And I've seen many people play taboo with applying for new jobs or putting feelers out. And it seems really unhealthy to have to look at it that way when all you're trying to do is grow. And why would your organization not want you to go grow and succeed? And at the end of the day, normally if you offer to pay more or adjust the job, you can keep the person. So, it's a give and take.
No, I think it's true. I've also, in the 10, 15 years that I've been in the working world, I've been really lucky to work with and work alongside people that have very different versions of success. But being able to pull little pieces from their experiences to pull those into my own career has been really helpful. So Scott and Nyla Wolf, who own Wolfpack Restaurant Group, that's here in central Indiana. That's Wolfie's Grill, Italian House in Westfield, Nyla's in Westfield, Broken Barrel, which is on Geist, Noblesville, and in Carmel. That they are constantly trying to figure out how to make their business better. So they started all different types of businesses, ended up in the restaurant industry, started with Wolfie's on the lake in Noblesville, and they've grown it like crazy. One of the things that I really enjoy is that they own a business with integrity. They also never stop trying to grow. So even during COVID, as a restaurant, they opened a new location in COVID, right? Like no restaurant was trying to do that at all. And so for me, as the marketing guy behind them, I'm gung ho. I'm bought in. Like they're setting a vision that's on fire. I absolutely want to do that. And that it's, I think it's contagious, when not only for me, but for them on their team, when every other business was going through layoffs. They kept their entire team on, even before the stimulus checks went out. They kept the entire team on. And when no one was going to restaurants, they just chose to use that time as the time to reinvest in their actual physical location. So they had servers painting walls. They totally reinvested at that point. And so to me, that's success, right? They were able to, in a really bad situation, they were able to call their own shots. They were able to stay open. They never let go anybody. And for me, I love working for people that are willing to set the vision, run a family operation like that with excellence, and continue to go no matter what obstacles are in the way.
Yeah, I think that's a true testament to the fact that risk is very inspiring too. Mm-hmm. It's not easy to take a risk. It's volatile. It's like the same thing as like buying cryptocurrency over putting something in a bond, right? Yep. And when you see people take those big risks, you are either completely taken aback by it and don't want to touch it, or you get bought in, right? And I think from an employee standpoint, if you see it, they're taking this risk in the middle of COVID. They're not going to make as much profit, and instead they're going to help us out. All we have to do is help out and paint this wall instead of wait on a table. That's inspiring. And I've found that at some level, getting people to buy into you is getting people to realize that you're not afraid to keep taking risk after risk after risk. Mm-hmm. And if you do that and you keep investing in yourself, people are normally like, well, something must be going right because it hasn't all fallen apart yet. And if it has, I'm sure there will be another risk to be taken. And I know we've talked about that in the past. People want to see progress and people buy into you and not what you're doing at the time. And I did not know that they had tried multiple businesses before. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you and I are both in a service business, and I'm always interested of, wow, how does somebody come up with that great product? Or how does all of the overhead of a restaurant convert to a profit? That's a hard industry to be in. It fascinates me. I'd love to have money to throw around at that one day.
Yeah. Well, and for people like the Wolves, like Scott started as a guy in the kitchen, right? So he has not ever asked somebody to do a job that he has not been willing to do himself.
That's great.
Right. Yeah. And so I think that's a different view too, when they have hundreds of employees now. But he knows how every part of the operation works. Mm-hmm. They've obviously grown it to the fact that he doesn't have to be in that, nor really when you're that big, should you be in that granular of the detail. But I think that's one of the reasons why it just tends to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, and that's part of growing pains too, is understanding that I'm not going to be doing these things that I've learned how to do over time now. And we have to pass that off and hope that the quality stays the same. Or at some point you have to say, or 80% of the way there, right? Mm-hmm. That's like we talked about with AI. It'll get you 80% of the way there. But if you're doing nothing, 80% is way better than where you're at. Mm-hmm. I think that's an interesting part of growing a business, is realizing, I have to let this go, or I don't know how to do this. I can either spend my time learning it, and maybe I learn the basics and then I hire a pro, and now at least I know their lingo, right? That's something we've ran into doing motion graphics and graphic design work before, is we know how to talk to those people very, very well. But some people are way more gifted at that than we are. And I think it's important to have the vocabulary in your industry to be able to do that.
Absolutely. I think another good example that I've seen firsthand, I think I've mentioned it here, but in Noblesville, the Pacers G League team is coming to Noblesville this year. Stay tuned for the name. That should be announced soon. In that process, we've gotten to know the Pacers team pretty well. And so, really for us right now, that's Danny Lopez and Mel Raines, who are both incredible people and leaders in their field. But also we've gotten to talk with Herb Simon too. And so for him, he started, in a very different place in life than where he's at now. And while I have not asked him this question, I would assume his overall vision is he just likes to build things. Right. Yeah. The Simons are known as the folks that build massive malls. Right. But they're also the Pacers people. That just recently they built a restaurant right next to the building where the Pacers play, and Commission Row. It's a really nice Cunningham restaurant, and they wanted to provide a quality place right next to so that you can get dinner before you catch a game. And I think that just originated in his mind, right? That he wants to build that. And I think that that's one of the things I find so inspiring about him and that organization is, yes, it's about basketball. Yes, it's about food. Yes, it's about malls, right? But he wants to build something to make the experience better. And that can take a whole different, cross section of roles. And I think that being nimble is super important, because if you just fall into one area in your entire career, I think eventually, like if they would have just stayed in malls, right, they might not have been able to be as successful as they are now. Right. But they have so many areas and they've been diversified that they're able to still be incredibly successful and be a player in Indianapolis, central Indiana and across the country, really. They're able to do that because they're willing to take risks, but do it all according to one vision.
Right. Absolutely. No, that's super interesting. And I think I resonate with, and I think most entrepreneurs will resonate with wanting to be builders or makers of some sort. I struggled a lot with the idea of I'm going to go into a career where all of my outcomes are abstract, or I'm pouring over data and then it gets passed off to the next person and you don't know where that goes. Right. Yep. To me, right, we get to export a video and have a video file, and then we can track the metrics and see how it did. And sometimes it results in huge wins, and that's great. And other times it's just, we got that person's story out, and that's plenty, right? If they cried watching it, we're always very happy, which it sounds cynical, but we want to create emotion on camera. And that means we told the story well enough that it made someone feel something. And that's awesome. Do you require the tangible, seeing something you've made come together, or are you fine just being a part of it?
So for me, I'm more fine with being a part of it. I care most about the relationships, right? Yeah. So really what we do is communications, but it's through relationships and other means that we help other businesses be successful. So communications is one small angle, but if we can help them leverage that into something else, that's a win. Okay. So that's the reason why I do what I do. Because I view success as building a network authentically, being able to know more people in my community, and be able to call my own shots. Right, everything else is secondary. Yeah,
that's awesome. Would you call? I guess your tangible outcome, is the relationships you make, right? Mm-hmm. That's your vision of success and work in a lot of ways. Yeah, I think that's great, and I think that's become more a part of my life. Is who do you know? How well do you know them? And that's not as a business transaction. That's as a look at all these human beings with knowledge that and you get to know and you learn something from, and they hopefully learn something from you. If not now, then in the future. I think that I've said it before, there's nothing more rewarding than finding somebody that you can talk with for 3 hours and you could have kept talking, but you have to go, or somebody you can pick up with, even if you haven't talked to them for 3 years, right? Those people you click with, there's kind of nothing more empowering than that to me. I think that's a lot of the reason why we have this podcast, right? You get that feedback, and it's a good creative brain exercise just to talk to someone.
I think one good closing thought that I would have on this topic is it also just success changes in the different areas of life. The way that I define success now is not the way I would have defined it when I was on the hill. When I was on the hill, I wanted to climb to the very top of the ladder. Yeah. When I left the hill and started my own business, I wanted to be the next Steve Jobs. I wanted to sit in my McMansion, have all the frills, right? And be the business guy. And then as I, started a family, as I got more involved in counsel, really, I narrowed that down to, yes, I want to be comfortable financially. Yes, I want to live in a safe place and, have a home that I can build equity in. But really, I just want to call my own shots. I want to call my own shots. I want to know the people that I'm working with and the community that I'm around. And that's what I call success now. I have no idea if that's still going to be what I think of success, 5 to 10 years from now. It could be radically different. But I think that's the important part, is not necessarily just falling into one lane either.
Yeah. I think that's entirely true. And part of my vision of success is building a business that is sellable. If it's not the current business, I want to build something that I can say, we built something of great, immense value, and another business would benefit greatly from this. So they're going to acquire it and I'm going to have a large amount of money in my bank account, right? Sounds wonderful. But if that does happen, or when that does happen, then I'm sure I'll realize, well, what do I want to be or do next, right? What do I want to be when I grow up? Because, here we're at an awesome point, but I'm going to get really bored if I'm just sitting at home now. So fully anticipating and hoping that I get to have that soul searching moment, or do I just want to get back, and where do I want to get back to? And I think that constantly evolves, right? When you're really young, it's, do I want to go to college or into a trade school, or do I want to see if I can make 70 grand out of high school, or what does that look like? And then in college, it's, do I want to become a doctor, or do I want to get X job out of school, or land X internship? And then you get out of school and you're left with all of these opportunities, whether you want to be a business owner in a startup, or you want to climb the corporate ladder, or you want to go run for office and go through things that way. I think life is just a repeating cycle of, let's learn from this moment. And that might be a 10-year moment, or it might be a 1-year moment. And then let's figure out what the next thing is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. One more thing that I just thought of that we'll close on, and I'm going to say it because I know that Jack won't. Another indicator of success is getting mentioned in a national publication. So if you didn't know, Jack had a letter to the editor that was featured in the Wall Street Journal, which is the paper that comes to my house every morning. So I was so proud of him that he got that in the Wall Street Journal. We'll put a link in the bio, or what. Jack's the one that does all that, but we'll put a link in there so that you can see it. But I think a lot of it feeds back to this too, right? Like tell it just real fast, give a Reader's Digest of what you wrote about.
Yeah. So you actually pointed the original article out to me and said, hey, this might be something you're interested in. And it was talking about how parents in STEM and technologies are now encouraging their kids to pursue the arts, because more and more of those entry-level jobs that they had out of school are being replaced by AI and automation and all these things. And most of the clients we work for are sort of in that sector, and we're trying to embrace it as much as possible. So I said, coming from a creative industry, creativity is the ultimate job security with AI and automation. You can be a STEM major, but if you don't come up with a genius prompt to give your AI tools, you're not going to be the next super successful business builder or titan of technology, or whatever it is. Creativity and the people with the best ideas go the furthest, right? Steve Jobs didn't do a bunch of coding himself by the end of his life, but he had the idea to put a computer in a manila envelope and pull it out on stage, and it changed the world, right? Yep. And that's an idea and a vision. And I think encouraging kids to be as creative as possible the whole time they're young will set them up to be the best workers and the best minds possible, no matter what field they pursue. If they're a physics major, or they're an advertising major, photography,
or if they don't go to school at all.
If they don't go to school, if they're a photography entrepreneur right out of school, or they want to start their own contracting business, or you want to do junk removal or haul things. Just met with those kids last night that are doing junk removal in Pendleton. I think they've made $4,000 in the last
That's amazing.
Month or two, which is awesome. In high school, just working weekends.
Yeah.
So I think that creativity is hugely important, and anywhere I can, I will shout about that. But also, Wall Street Journal is nothing I expected, nor anticipated doing. And I wouldn't know how to do that if it weren't for sitting in the office with you every day. So thank you. But I think that's something else too, is share your knowledge, right? It will help you curb your imposter syndrome by sharing your knowledge. Because if somebody else picks up and runs with it, or regurgitates your information, even if it's just to a friend or a mutual connection, you see that somebody's taking you seriously, right? And I never would have expected that would have got chosen to get published. But then that reinforces the fact that, okay, I'm on to something here, right? And I think that is an awesome thing to do. Share your piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. See you next week.
See ya.